Now it's time to start a discussion about the while loop, but first let's look a little bit at our previous code to see how our indentation works to create new blocks of code. And we're going to start with the for, and the for creates the first block of code, and it's the block of code is from the line 3 to line 9. So as you can see, the line 3 from line 9 is the block of code of the for, and everything which is within that block is part of the for loop. So all of this code is part of the for loop. Next, within the for loop, we have another, an if statement, and we have a line here gray out, and that is there to tell us that there we're starting a new block of code. And that block of code is part of the if statement. So whatever we put inside whatever we put at the same level of indentation as those lines of code, it will be part of the if statement, but it also gonna be part of the for statement, because the if statement is inside the block of the for loop. And the same is true about the else. Else is also creating here a block of code, as you can see, delimited by this line that we have here. So whatever if I press enter here, it goes to the next line, and it indented by 4 spaces from the line on the left that we have here. And whatever code I put here, it will be part of the else, but the else statement, it's also is inside the block of the for. So all of this code that we have here is inside the block of code of the for. So it's the block of code of the for, a better way of saying is the block of code of the for, all of this code. And it's interesting how Python uses indentation to indicate when a new block of code is created. And if you don't see these lines, just go to File, go to Settings, go to Editor, click on Appearance, and make sure that you have this Show Indented Guides checked. If that is not checked, just check that and click on Apply and OK. And you will see those lines that I have here. And I think that is true also for other editors like PyCharm. So make sure to have those lines, because in this way you can see which block of code belongs to each structure, to which block of code belongs to the for, which block of code belongs to the if, and so on. Alright, now it's time to start a discussion about the while loop. And the while loop is usually used in scenarios where you don't know for how many times you want to loop. So the while loop is used in scenarios where you don't know for how many times you want to loop, but you want to loop until a certain condition becomes false. And in those scenarios, you use the while loop. So I'm going to delete this code because I don't need this code. I'm going to create a variable I, and I'm going to assign 0 to it. Now, to create a while loop, just type while. So we type while, the keyword while, we press enter. And next we need to specify a condition. So here we're going to put our condition. And then we put colon. And as long as this condition that we're going to specify here is true, the code which going to be indented, which is going to be indented by 4 spaces. So whatever you put here indented by 4 spaces, all of that code is going to be executed repeatedly until the condition becomes false. So if I put here while, let's say I is less than or equal to 10, as long as this condition is true, our loop is gonna loop. So if I add a print here to print the I, but now we're missing something very important, but I'm gonna run the code as it is to illustrate the problem. So if I run this code, we get 0, and now we have what is called an infinite loop, because our loop because the I is always less than 10, because the I has a value of 0 and is always less than 10 and it's not incremented, so the value of I is not changing, so that it will have at some point 11. So for the expression to be evaluated to false, the while loop loops forever because it never evaluates to false. What we need to do is to go down here after we printed the I, and we need to type I. As you can see, this is also indented by 4 spaces, so this is going to be part of the block of the while. So we're going to put I equals to I plus 1. So now at each iteration of the while, we're going to increment the I by 1. So now if you run this, you'll see this only 10 times, and 10 is inclusive because we put it here I less than or equal to 10. So when it's gonna be 10, it will still evaluate to true, and it will output 10 in the console. Now there is a shorter way to write what we have here is respectively I equals to I plus 1. We can write this in a shorter way by putting here plus equals I, and this is the same code. This will have the same effect as the previous code. So now if you run this, we have a problem. Yes, it should say I plus equals 1, not I plus equals I, so that was the problem. So now we have again 0 to 10, we have printed in the console, and everything works fine. So this code that we have now here, it's doing the same thing as the previous code was doing, so like this code. But now we're using a shorter way to write this. So we put here I plus equals 1, not I like I typed there previously. So again, how this while loop works. We first declare this variable, we assign 0 to it, then we type the while keyword, so the while loop, and it specify our condition. We're gonna say while I is less than equal to 10, so as long as our I is less than equal to 10, execute this code which comes after the colon. So everything that is indented by 4 spaces here is gonna be part of the while loop and is gonna be executed. In this case, we print I and we increment I by 1. And the first iteration, I, as you can see, is 0. Then it's incremented by 1 and I is going to be 1. Then when it will loop again, it will check the condition. I is going to be less than 10 because I is going to be 1. And it's going to output 1 in the console. Then it will increment I by 1. So now it's going to be 2. It will loop again and it will check to see if I is less than 10 and I is less than 10, because now we have 2 less than equal to 10, so this will evaluate to true, and so on until we reach 10. When we reach when we reach 9, it will output 9 in the console. It will increment 9 by 1 and it will check to see if I respectively 10 is less than or equal to 10, and it's true. 10 is less than equal to 10, then it will loop, it will print I, so we have 10, and then it will increment I again, and now I is gonna be 11, and now it will check to see if I is less than equal to 10, but now I is 11, and that is gonna evaluate to false, and the loop is gonna stop. So this is very important to make sure that the condition at some point evaluates to false, because if you don't do that, like you saw, you will have an infinite loop, so your loop will run forever. It will never stop. And there is another way to write this with using the logical NOT operator. But now we're using the logical NOT operator using the exclamation mark. So what we can say here is while I is not equal to 10. So and to do that, to put an exclamation mark and equal. And what you're saying here, while I is not equal to 10, print I and increment I. So now if you run this, you'll have the same, you'll not have the same output. You'll have 9 and 10 is not inclusive, because here now you're checking to see if I is not equal to 10. So when it will be equal to 10, this will evaluate to false and it will not execute the code inside the while. So it will not output in the console 10. This is why I don't have 10 here. So this is another way of writing a condition using the exclamation mark and the equal. And you can the logical NOT operator using this exclamation mark can be put before any expression to change the value from true to false and from false to true. And I'm going to show you how to do that in a separate video if there is confusion about this. So I'm going to end this video now and see you in the next video.